Hey, we had such a great conversation with Ali that we went a little bit over, and so we just decided to cut this up and give you a part 2 of that. Please continue listening. Just great content coming your way. What do you think your greatest challenge is in real estate?
I don't know. After 18 years, I've gone through it. I think I've gone through it all. I think the technology is probably the biggest challenge if I want to point out anything. We start competing with, a company versus a person, like with the iBuyer. You can go online and then get an offer. But the reality is I think, with all the advancement in technology, I think we cannot take the human element out of it completely, because even if I make a robot that sells a house, I need a person to operate it.
Right. That's true. That's true. So how do you overcome that challenge then? What do you do to still
Kill all
stay
the
relevant?
robots.
iRobot right now, huh?
Yeah, kill all the iBuyers. No, just kidding. I think it's, again, just like with everything else, like you stay true to yourself. People still do business with people. Real estate is just a people person. Even with the iBuyers, they will end up with the person meeting with them or an agent. So I think we should constantly educate our client about what's really good for them. And sometimes what's good for them might not be good for us, but because I had a situation where a client of mine, and they were selling their home, it's inheritance, they wanted to do it quick. And when I looked at all aspects of their situation, I said, hey, you better take this offer. I think I cannot do better in the time frame that you want this to be done. So, and I think that's the type of truthfulness that we need to have, or the kind of relationship to have with our clients. So this way they can trust, yes, he or she, the agent, is, have their, my best. They're promoting and protecting my best interest, not theirs.
It's such a tough road to navigate, right? Where you still have your own self-interest that you're dealing with, but trying to overcome that to be benefit to someone else's.
We do. In the end of the day, I mean, that's my approach, and I think that's one of my keys to success, because when I started real estate, I was an investor. So I went to for sale, like was a yard sale, and then I asked the seller, are you interested in selling? And he said, as a matter of fact, yeah, once we finish all this cleanup and all that. So I made him an offer, and I made him an offer from an investor, not as his real estate agent. And so I follow up with him a few days later. It's like, hey, what happened? It's like, well, I sold it for much higher than what you offered me. And I said, well, the offer I made is based on my interests, Ali, the investor, not Ali, a representative. And from that moment on, I learned I have to differentiate whether I'm a representative of the client or I'm a representative of Ali, the investor. And I sold all my investment, I cleared everything, and now I just represent clients, buyer and sellers.
That's cool. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I was just thinking about some lessons and how we learn lessons and things like that. As a kid, I came into the situation where my mom was married and my dad was married. They both had families, and somehow I was living with my grandmother. I'm like, man, does no one want me? Like, what is this? But I took it, it was particularly towards my dad, like, my kids will never know what it's like to not feel loved or whatever from their dad, or not being around. Yeah. And so that was my lesson, and I hold on to that. Like, no matter what's going on, I'm there for my kids. That's what I do. So I just wanted to, kind of draw you back to, I guess, the time when you're kind of going through that transition of leaving Iraq and being in between. Yeah. Here and there. What were some of the, or lesson that you took that you hold, or is there anything that you took out of that?
Well, excellent question. I think part of it, I grew up with 5 sisters, so technically I was spoiled in many sense. I get my shirt ironed, I got the food is ready. Now I'll have to in the refugee camp, I call it, it's an introduction to a Bedouin life, because it was a desert. We were living in a tent. At that time, we didn't have pots and pans, so we cooked in a can, actually. Like, imagine you cook rice in
Like a soup can.
Yeah, and that has lead on it. We talk about hopefully. So that change our perspective completely. In fact, big part of it is prepare me to the next life. Like, or coming to the U.S., I lived in one-bedroom apartment with 4 other guys. So like, but what we learn from it is just like how you turn negative into positive. Like, in 4 months, I bought my first car. I'm like, wow. And then with the apartment wasn't in a great neighborhood, but it was close to a school that provide ESL, or English as second language. So I was like finishing work at 4:30 in the morning. I'm at 8:30. I'm in the class, and sometimes I literally have a sandwich in my hand, and I didn't realize. I mean, you start. These experiences, I think, start humble you. It start building you, making you stronger, and then you start thinking like, wow, I was blessed in my previous life. Now I have to learn everything. I have to learn the new language. I have to learn culture. I have to learn customs, like how to talk to people, how to ask for things. And so there was. But honestly, I mean, my main focus was on 2 things, like to learn the language and and learn to stay out of trouble. That's when I work in nonprofit organization. That's the biggest advice I was giving refugees. Like, hey, you want to succeed in this country, learn the language. At least you can communicate, and then learn the law so you can stay away from trouble.
Good advice. Good advice.
Yeah.
Well, I see you brought a book. I love asking about books, and they're fascinating to me. So, what book did you bring, and why?
Well, for me personally, like switching from nonprofit to profit I was dealing with it the same way. Hey, man, I'll show you as many as you want. Yeah, no problem. I'm here for you. I'll do everything for you. But the reality, there's a science behind selling, and we need to understand the science. And I wish I read this book when I first came. When I first came to real estate, and the book name is "To Sell is Human," by Daniel Pink. What he does is just like he breaks things into science. Like when your child comes to you and trying to convince you, hey, I need a 70-inch TV so I can do my homework efficiently. Like, okay, that's part of negotiation, because they know they're hitting a point you probably will not negotiate or you'll not say no to, which is the study.
Right.
And so that's what I really like about this book, because it's really easy to read. It's very simple to understand. And it's just basically it's a human, because there is some almost unwritten rules, like salespeople are bloodsucker, they're vampire, taking my commission, taking.
Yep.
And I think it's really just gonna change people's perspective about how to sell or how to look at sales, especially for those who didn't come from sales background to real estate.
Right. I appreciate that, because you hear it a lot. I'm just not a salesperson, but we all are. We all are. Right?
We are.
When we want something, we figure out a way to sell someone else on it. So.
And definitely, for real estate agents, definitely need to understand like how to overcome. There's just so many factors, like how to overcome objection, how to sell, like because we asking for people to pay us top price, for compensation or commission. So now you gotta learn how to sell that. Like, what's your value? Are you worth the 6% you're asking for, the seller to pay? And I think this book will help a lot with that. Another series of book I really like a lot is Thomas Stanley. He wrote about working with the affluent, selling to the affluent, networking with the affluent. So if anybody wants to do anything in the luxury, I highly recommend. Excuse me. I highly recommend that they read those.
That's cool. That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just drew a blank on what I was going to ask. I got it now. I was just thinking, what are something you wish you would have known that you know now before you got into the industry or when you first got in? What is something you, I wish I would have known that. I wish I had that down.
Definitely. I mean, the school will teach you what to do, what not to do legally, or keep you away from trouble. But really doesn't teach you the rest of the stuff, like how to sell, like how to justify price, and these are, I think, the things that are missing from our real estate school. The school, the entire system built around the contract, disclosure, and things like that, which is okay. But in there, I think there should be a second school, like, hey, you graduate, you got your license, now what? How I get my first sales? How do I write my first contract? What do I need to know? I think there's a book says the name of it is like I don't know, 10 things I wish my broker taught me or something like that. Yeah, definitely that aspect, because that aspect you didn't learn in the school at all.
That's typically what I hear. Like, yeah, they just teach you how to get out of trouble, stay out of trouble. But
exactly.
it's on the job learning. It's just a continual process moving
Absolutely,
forward.
yeah. Yeah, I wish there was like a map, like here, this is a map to success, and
maybe you should create it.
I could, yeah. I would love to. I'm thinking about making a video. It's like doing real estate by the books, not by the books.
Yeah, I like that.
And
That's
maybe
great.
I talk about all the books I read in my career.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think you ought to put that down. That's a good one.
Definitely, yeah.
If you don't, I might steal it. So.
All right, no problem. Just give me credit for it.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah.
So, I appreciate you coming on and sharing a few things with you. I just enjoyed speaking with you and getting to know you a little bit better. I sense that you're pretty adventurous. So, what's something that you consider maybe the craziest thing you've done and maybe you won't do again?
I don't know. I'm scared of height, actually.
Okay.
I definitely is my bucket list to do, maybe a scuba dive, to do what they call
skydiving.
Skydive as well. These are some of my bucket lists. I definitely like to do those. My kids they're more adventurous than me. I would say it goes back again to, I was in the refugee camp, and my English, we studied English in school, but we never spoke it, we never practiced it. And I wanted to go to the UN guy and say, hey, my case, I was one of the first 400 people who got interviewed to come to the US. I mean, not to come to the US, but with the UN to process to come to the US. So like there's 2 steps. And I noticed people interview after me, and they're coming to the US. And I went to I was in the refugee camp, so I had to leave to sneak out of the camp, because there was a guard, and there's a bus that take people only the people who have interview or name on the list. So I somehow sneak, and then I came to this guy. I was like, hey, can you interpret for me with the UN office? He's like, no, I work for the US delegation. I don't interpret for the UN. So I'm like, okay. So I didn't say something nice. And here I am, I'm in the front of the line, and now I have to speak English, and I'm like, you remember me because I created a basketball court in the refugee camp, and he came to play one time. And he's like, yeah, you're the basketball player. And I said, I don't know how to explain, but I said, I'm tired. And he's like, well, everybody's tired. So finally I got it out of my system. I said, people get 2 chances, I get no chance, you know, and it's like, I said, help me. It's like, okay. And then I was like, promise. And I was like, okay, I'll help you. And then I said, promise. And then he said, okay. So I shook his hand, I left. A month later, my name was in the list. So English language was my biggest, I think, challenge. So like, hey, why do I need interpreter? So I asked my best friend who lived in other countries, like, because this friend is like, I can never send you money, but I'll send you books. So I seen I need a book other than those books you learn English in 7 days.
Yeah.
So he sent us a really valuable book. It's called English for All Levels, and I continued to improve my English. When I arrived, I spoke fluently.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Just overcoming those challenges and moving forward, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It just makes you stronger.
Thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. Definitely the perspective coming from somewhere else, and trying to deal with how we do it here. So thank you so much.
Definitely, I appreciate it.
Where can we find you at? Where can the audience find you? How can they get a hold of you?
You can find me on my website, phoenixgreenhomeconcept.com, or Facebook. I'm Ali Al-Asady.
How about your phone number?
623-332-4116.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thank you
Okay.
for having me.